Is it recording? The video says it's recording. Okay, so what's up? This is a tutorial on how to make the simplest modular engine and controller setup. It's not even much of a controller. Spoiler alert, it just involves math. Very simple math. So I have this little platform here so I can actually build the engine and the other things that it's needed to control it. And there's a battery underneath, just to make things look cleaner. Okay, so look up modular in the component inventory and grab your crankshafts, of course. So for this video I'm going to make an 8-cylinder, a flat 8. So let's go get the cylinders. Now, you're going to need to connect both of these rows because each of these cylinders are already connected to each other. But this is not connected to this. They cannot share the same resources. You know, they cannot share fuel, they cannot share air, and they cannot output the exhaust into each other. So you connect them using these manifolds. So you get a corner manifold here and a straight manifold to connect each row. Now they're synchronized. So next is you're going to want a flywheel, although this isn't really necessary, it's optional. If you're going to use it for aircraft, you don't need a flywheel. If you're going to use it for ground vehicles and trains and whatnot, or even boats, you're going to want a flywheel. And of course, after the flywheel, you add a clutch. So you can actually connect it to the drivetrain or the transmission of whatever you want to power. Then at the front of the engine, you're going to want a belt drive. So you can put a starter, so you can actually start the engine. You can put 2, but I'm just going to put 1 for this example. And I'm going to put 2 alternators to either side, just like that. Okay. Next, we need a fuel manifold. And of course, we need an air manifold. So I'm going to grab a fluid tank so we can actually have fuel. That's too large. I'm going to put this here. And connect it up. Sometimes you have to check if it's diesel or not. Then you're going to need an air filter. Or even an air ram, anything that can intake fluids. But air filters usually, they're the best option for naturally aspirated engines. I'm not going to explain what that means, it's not part of the scope of this video. Okay, then of course we're going to need exhaust manifolds, so we can actually get the stinky smoke out of the engine. Just to make it look nice, I'm going to use these corner pieces, and then these angled pipes, and T-pieces, so I can do this. Oops. And this isn't necessary, but just to reduce the smoke and some of the power, it doesn't really matter, I'm going to use some catalytic converters. And then of course, exhausts. Okay, now we have one last thing that's needed. Cooling. So for that, you're going to need some coolant manifolds. So let's just place them here on both sides. Just grab a pipe to a block, just a straight one, and some angled pipes so that they're connected. And then we're going to need some pumps. Now since it's a loop, and loops only go in one direction, you're going to have to disable symmetry, place one pump pumping out, and another pump pumping in. Okay? And then we're going to need a radiator. There we go. Look at that. Of course, let's hook up the electricity so we can actually power these components. And let's grab a seat. I'll use a compact pallet seat. And let's grab 2 levers. Those are too far. Let's name this the clutch. And let's name this the throttle. And you can set the sensitivity to whatever you want. That just determines how fast it's going to ramp up the engine. Or rather, no, it's going to determine the sensitivity of the throttle input. So it slowly ramps up from 0 to 1, depending on the sensitivity value. Okay. For the throttle lever, you're going to need a function block. Oh, right, and connect these to the electricity as well. Connect the throttle to the input of this function block, and connect the output of this function block into your fuel manifold, just your fuel manifold. The throttle lever itself is going to be connected directly to the air manifold. Now with this function block, you can either put x divided by 2, or we can be more specific and do x times 0.4999. You can also just put 0.5. But I do 0.499 because why not? Okay. Then you're also going to need some constant numbers since I put some alternators on here. Connect that to these. And set the number in here to 1. And of course, we're going to need some buttons. We're going to need a key button. You can also use a toggle button. So I'll just use a toggle button. So it's easier. And a push button. Again, connect these to the electricity. And connect the toggle button to the components that need to stay on all the time, such as the coolant pumps and the radiator. Then connect the push button to the starter, since you really only need a little bit of initial spinning going on to get the engine running. Then connect this left throttle, the clutch lever, into the clutch that's behind the flywheel. And to avoid confusion, let's just name this cooling. Let's name this starter. Right, okay. So this should run. Let's go test it out. Okay. So turn the cooling on. Verify that yes, the fan is turning. There's some fluid flowing because the pumps are going. Let's add a little bit of throttle. See the output of this. Let's start. Let go of the starter. It's gonna start ramping up. Let's add more throttle. Running. So that is how you make the simplest controller for a modular engine. You just need a function block and a throttle lever.